Organisers in Port Macquarie have made it an easy choice for families on where to go this New Year's Eve. The town green will be the centre of attention tomorrow night, with plenty of action and entertainment.
It's an alcohol-free event, and last year and the year before attracted somewhere around about 4,000 or 5,000 people, and we're expecting, if the weather's kind to us, to have a similar turnout for this year.
Local bands Headroom and Moonlighters will provide the music. The first fireworks will be lit at 9:30, and it'll be hard to find a spare spot on the grass.
Town's chock-a-block full, and people keep coming and going. We don't have the long-term booking so much these days, but lots of people that come for short stays, 1 or 2 days at a time, and we find that that's a very good way to run the tourist side of our town.
There'll be no drugs or alcohol permitted in the area, with a visible police force making sure the crowds are well behaved.
Controlled by security guards, but they'll be very low key, and the police have offered us total support to ensure that there's no unruly behaviour takes place.
Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
The tragic scenario unfolded shortly after lunch when police received a call from a distraught mother claiming her child had been murdered. The woman had taken refuge in this Bulladila farmhouse, fleeing from her ex-de facto who'd stopped for petrol at the local service station.
A lady came running over to me and asked if she could use the phone, and she was very distressed, crying, rather incoherent. She said she wanted to ring the police, so I said yes, that's fine.
From there, she relayed her chilling ordeal to police, telling them she'd been abducted and forced to drive at knife point from her far north coast home at dawn with her 2 young children and the body of her strangled 5-year-old daughter. The young family was forced to watch as the girl's body was dumped in the driveway of this rural property at Brunswick Heads.
It appears at this stage that the death is suspicious. It appears that it may be a result of a domestic-related incident.
Later this afternoon, a massive manhunt got underway in Bulladila after a man ran from the petrol station into the nearby bushland. Less than 2 hours later, he was captured 80 kilometres further south at a train station near Newcastle.
A 29-year-old male has been taken into custody and is currently assisting police with their inquiries.
A 29-year-old man will be further questioned over the matter tonight. The woman's 10-week-old baby and 5-year-old son are being cared for by welfare officers.
When I realised what it was, I was really shocked and very upset for her, and extremely glad in a selfish way that it had never happened to my family. I must have been pretty lucky.
Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
It was the final day of the Australian titles, but it ended too soon for some. On a day with strong southerlies that blew around 40 to 50 kilometres an hour, snapped masts became the order of the day. Those that did manage to keep things intact could hang on and enjoy the ride, but even when it looked like those on board were mastering the waters, Mother Nature weighed back in. Competition over the 7 heats had been as fierce as the conditions, with today's final race the only way to sort out a jammed leaderboard for good. Placed second overall, the Drop Pie Ferry was well in front in the final race, with the finishing line in sight and also within reach the national title. But incredibly, Mark Matthews and Russell Ford capsized and drifted back across the starting line, breaching the sailing instructions and sparking immediate confusion among officials. Well back, the Georges River craft South Park, which sailed over the line, but no one could tell if that had sealed the Ewing brothers, Scott and Dave, the Australian title. As some still wrestled with a way of reaching dry land, the protest room was heating up as the Queensland crew defended its case in the room. The Breakers are getting used to after-match celebrations, but Friday night's emphatic win against the competition leaders Sydney Olympic was something to savour. But far from getting carried away, players enjoyed the moment, knowing this season has a long way to run.
This is not going to go forever, to be realistic. You know, no team goes undefeated, but there's not going to be a game when we don't roll our sleeves up and have a go.
There's still 19 games to go, so we won't get too carried away. We're in at six at the moment, but a long way to go.
Glenn Moore was one of the Breakers' heroes against an Olympic team far from happy with its own performance and that of referee Matthew Breeze.
That's not taking anything away, but they didn't beat us. The referee and Newcastle combined together to win the game. Have a look at the replay.
The call Colina questioned was this when Newcastle was awarded the corner in a touch-and-go ruling. It led to Todd McManus's goal, but just as they did on field, Newcastle had the final say. Newcastle actually had a man sent off during the match in Travis Dodd. He now serves an automatic 1-week suspension. That, the only low light to what was a night to remember.
It's a fantastic dressing room. You can feel it now. Newcastle's a terrific place. It's got a terrific spirit about it.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Looking at the twisted wreckage of the Toyota Hilux, it's hard to believe no one was killed when it speared off the Pacific Highway 20 kilometres north of Karua just after 10 this morning.
For some reason, which will be the cause of investigation, the female driver has lost control.
Rescue workers spent 90 minutes cutting a woman in her 30s, a 9-year-old boy and a 45-year-old man out from the front cabin of the Hilux. The Westpac rescue helicopter called in to airlift the seriously injured driver. She was rushed to John Hunter Hospital, the passengers ferried there by ambulance. Dense bushland around the crash scene forced the rescue helicopter to land on the highway itself. That caused lengthy delays in either direction, testing motorists' patience. Cars, buses and trucks bumper to bumper for 10 kilometres in both directions, slowed to a crawl or stopped altogether for close to 3 hours. Police say the woman lost control of the light truck on a bend in the road, but add they're not sure why. Witnesses say she wasn't speeding.
But it does go to show, and it should alert other road users, that accidents can happen even at lower speeds.
The woman remains in a serious but stable condition with pelvis, leg and internal injuries. The boy suffering pelvis and head injuries. The other male passenger, lacerations. Matt Carden, NBN News.
In today's windy conditions, Talara Lagoon looked like any other waterway, but the signs were there in sheltered areas. It's been infested with blue-green algae.
Blue-green algae is generally caused by excessive nutrients in the water and low flushing or stable systems like this lagoon system and warm water temperatures.
The Department of Land and Water Conservation has placed signs around the lagoon, warning locals about the dangers posed by the outbreak. The basic message, don't swim in the water or drink it, and fishing isn't a good idea either.
This particular species of blue-green algae is potentially toxic to humans and animals. It can cause skin irritations in children and adults who enter the water, and it also has the potential to cause death in pets.
Not a great deal can be done to combat the algal bloom. It'll be continually monitored with warnings lifted once it subsides. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
It's the most colourful weekend of the year on Newcastle Harbour. On the 22nd and 23rd of January, Australia's oldest and busiest coal port becomes a venue for recreation and competition. Today is the Alpha Gemini, steamed for Indonesia with 70,000 tonnes of coal aboard. Some of the attractions of this year's festival were unveiled. Among them, the nation's richest wakeboarding contest.
We've introduced wakeboarding, of course a rapidly growing sport, closely related to snowboarding and skateboarding. Very popular, a couple of great young athletes, the Morgan brothers, involved in the competition, and we hope to have the hottest wakeboarding field in Australia operating here right close to the foreshore where people can see them.
Round 2 of the Australian Formula 1 Powerboat Series will also be held on the challenging harbour course.
It's generally a fairly rough course. There's a bit of swell through, so the boats tend to bounce all over the joint. So some drivers love it, some drivers hate it.
The Cross the Harbour Swim and a food and wine fair will be held on the Sunday, and $20,000 from the state government is being spent to market the event to Sydney-siders.
One of the things that we find is that tourists who visit here love to see the working port backdrop, to be at the brewery, to be at the waterfront and to see big ships go by. But now we're going to be able to see tourists from Sydney and other places coming here on this weekend and watching a commercial, large working port with a recreational focus, and that's terrific.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
At the Mater Hospital, queues are commonplace and ambulances have been used to bed patients. No one is arguing that work needs to be done to improve levels of care, but staff are concerned at proposals for private funding.
It is a public hospital. Why doesn't it deserve consideration for public funding via the state government like any other hospital in New South Wales?
General Manager Colin Osborne says public funding could be as much as 8 years away.
The sisters and the board want to pursue the options that will secure a flow of redevelopment funding more quickly than could be supplied through the public purse, and I think if you've looked around the hospital you'll see that it really desperately does need redevelopment.
Staff fear any form of privatisation will make profit a priority for a hospital where services like oncology have been provided by community funding.
And their reward for that seems to be for somebody to now turn around and say, well, we don't believe the taxpayers' money, the state government's money, is good enough to actually fund a redevelopment of the hospital that contains oncology.
We share those concerns, and I would think that our meeting on Tuesday would endorse their campaign and endorse a proposal to assist and participate in that campaign.
Gillian Skinner, the opposition spokesperson for health, added her support.
The Minister for Health has abandoned the people of the Newcastle area, and the Labor members of Parliament have been absolutely silent.
The Newcastle Trades Hall Council would also want to talk to the Labor members.
David McElwain, NBN News. Angela Tisdall was jilted by a man who married his old girlfriend. They were both her workmates. In Maitland Court today, Leroy Evans told how Tisdall approached him and said, "Did I know anyone who knows how to do a hit?" The prosecuting solicitor then asked, "And what did you think she meant?" Evans replied, "To kill someone." In evidence, he later said he came back to her and asked for $10,000, which Tisdall paid. But Evans said he spent the money without any intention of carrying out the plan until Tisdall put pressure on him, when she allegedly said, "If the hit happens soon, I've got a bonus for you." He then told the court that she gave him an envelope at their Beresfield workplace, which was supposed to contain all the details required for the hit. Evans told the prosecuting solicitor he accidentally dropped the envelope out of his top pocket within the time it took him to walk to the toilet. When confronted by police, Mr. Evans said he'd never seen the letter before, but recognised the envelope. Later, he agreed to organise a meeting between Angela Tisdall and an undercover detective. Committed for trial, Angela Tisdall will appear in Newcastle District Court on the 3rd of next month to face charges of soliciting to murder.
Almost 1,000 people die from breast cancer each year in New South Wales alone. In the Hunter, 250 new cases are diagnosed every 12 months. But now, because of a holiday shutdown of surgical beds at the Mater Hospital, patients scheduled for life-saving surgery have this week been turned away.
As of yesterday, a third of the surgery beds were closed, and we've had to cancel breast cancer operations, and we have a number of women, and too many women, currently waiting too long.
The effect of the delays on patients can be terrifying.
Certainly a delay in treatment of any kind of cancer will increase the anxiety, and that psychological stress is going to be put on themselves and also their family and friends who are waiting to have them treated.
Professor Forbes says the lack of ability to operate on women has forced them to temporarily cut free screening for new clients.
If we can't guarantee that a woman can get access to all of her treatment resources when she needs them, then it's just plainly irresponsible to be recruiting new women to the program.
The Hunter Area Health Service says it has been increasing funding to the hospital for its public services each year and has asked for a please explain.
We're holding meetings with the MATA management and the clinicians to seek their immediate explanation about why these problems are occurring.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The crack of dawn and 80 police get set to end a 12-month investigation.
They are supported with a group of detectives which form a task force Monk, which has been responsible for the execution of these search warrants.
The main target was at Mount View near Cessnock. The owner of this isolated 21-hectare property wasn't home when police arrived to find 27 marijuana plants. Later he returned with police as drugs and firearms sniffer dogs helped in the search for other contraband. Members of the operational support group will continue their search of the property while other officers question the man believed to be the member of a bikie gang. In all, it's likely to keep police busy for 3 weeks, and Inspector Neil Scarr is delighted with the message the raid sends.
This is the coppers are out there and we're still going to keep coming at you.
In all, police raided 4 properties, finding more drugs at Marks Point and stolen property at Fullerton Cove. David McElwain, NBN News.
It's the Catho Classic's 21st year, and all was well with a great swell coming to the party, consistently pushing waves up and over the 1 metre mark. Justin Lee enjoyed things. He won his Open Division heat before hitting the water again in the over 28s, and he carved up the waves and points once again. But even the man locals call the legend couldn't reel in Andrew Brinkworth, who was in a zone of his own. He also won his open heat, and by the way he surfed in the over 28s, he's a real chance to win the Blue Ribbon final. In fact, he posted the ride of the day, with judges awarding him a perfect 10 for a ride that included a number of slashing manoeuvres, impressing the people that count. He'll be hoping his form continues in tomorrow's final. After finishing second a number of times, this looks to be his best chance to take the title. One of those out to stop him, Scott Myers, club champion of Catherine Hill Bay. He showed he'll be a real threat in the decider as well, with a trademark performance on his home break today. He finished third in the final last year, but cruised into this year's big one with a solid win in his heat, relegating Matt Hucker to the repechage final in the process. And Franco Conquest was almost unbackable, returning just 130 the win. Roosters, Rastus and Quality Franco filled out the minors. The Quinilla $10.10 and Trifecta $79.10. It just wouldn't be a Catho Classic final without Justin Lee. Today he lined up in his 14th straight decider, surfing in every one since he was 16 with 6 titles to his credit. Paul Parks too has made a habit of winning here and today aimed to make it 4 in a row, but this wasn't to be either of their days. In fact, the winner was found in a surfer that's played second fiddle to both of them over the years in Dan Frodsham. With some nice barrel rides, he racked up the points to have his name at the top of the leaderboard along with Andy Brinkworth. The man in green looked in great touch with some high-scoring rides, while Christian McCall looked in awesome touch as well with some slashing vertical manoeuvres that put him in contention also. However, Frodsham wasn't to be denied and powered home late in the final to take out the 21st Catho Classic. In the over 28, Scott Myers showed the form that saw him win the Newcastle and Zone Championship for the division, but this event had eluded him on his home break until today. He beat Justin Lee. From surf to the speedway, and it was sprint car night at Tomago, but before they featured, an extreme sports team put on a show of their own. 14-time national motocross champion Troy Carroll still gets high on performing for a crowd, as does BMX legend Peter James. But it was the raw power the crowd had come to see in the 650 horse-powered sprint cars served up the main course. Bob Jackson blitzed the crack field, blazing his way to a comfortable win.
After he went down the second time, when he went down the third time, we didn't saw him anymore. He was gone.
"70-year-old Alexander Paul Tyndall was found unconscious and not breathing at around 3 o'clock on Saturday morning after fire had taken hold of his Burke Street cottage. Ambulance officers revived the man before taking him to hospital in a critical condition. Mr Tyndall lost his fight for life at around 2 o'clock this afternoon in John Hunter Hospital's intensive care unit. His 40-year-old son, Donald Gary Tyndall, faced Newcastle local court this morning, first charged with attempted murder, setting fire with intent to kill and maliciously damaging a property by fire. Detectives are still tonight considering whether they will upgrade the charges and are awaiting the results of a post-mortem. In opposing, Barra Police said they held grave fears for the safety of the witnesses if the defendant was released. Magistrate Michael Morahan refused bail and remanded the defendant in custody until the 15th of February. No plea has been entered. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
So far this summer, the weather has been less than kind to beachgoers. Even so, lifeguards have been busy. On Saturday, treacherous conditions meant 24 swimmers had to be pulled from the water within the space of half an hour at Nobby's Beach.
During a period from about 11 till 1 o'clock on Saturday, we had to close the beach due to the number of rescues we had and with the dangerous seas that were at the time.
Lifeguards are warning all beachgoers to be careful, saying Nobby's isn't the only beach where conditions can be tricky.
All the beaches at the moment have got very difficult sandbanks and some very nasty gutters and channels in the areas that we don't usually have them. And so if the seas get up, we're going to have a hard summer.
According to lifeguards, Saturday's situation was nothing out of the ordinary. Nobbies being continually subject to changing conditions which can catch even experienced swimmers unawares. And it was purely coincidental that so many swimmers found themselves in trouble.
To lose so many people in one go was quite sort of a shock to us.
While lifeguards were prepared for the conditions and all bathers escaped injury, it comes as a timely reminder to only swim at patrolled beaches and to always stay between the flags. Adam Harper, NBN News.
It's not something you see every day.
Didn't expect a car on the roof, I don't think.
Some are close in Toronto on Lake Macquarie, the focus, after this Falcon station wagon parked on a steep driveway without warning rolled backwards and onto the neighbour's garage roof.
Went to work this morning and got home about 10 o'clock and just parked the car normally and didn't put the handbrake on. Went inside and heard a big crash. Ran out and found that the car was on the roof.
A shock for the mother of four, grateful her own 4 children and a niece and nephew from Queensland were out of harm's way and still asleep inside the house. Firemen had their work cut out for them, draining away leaking fuel from the car in searing 35-degree heat. A lucky escape too for new homeowner and neighbour, 19-year-old Simone Bager.
I was actually getting ready to go out and I heard a big bang came out and the neighbour said, "There's a car on your house." And I just said, "What?" And I went and looked up and, yeah, it's on there.
While Simone and her partner Brett have home insurance, the Gluckens didn't have comprehensive cover for the Falcon, prompting this warning from Narelle to other car owners before leaving their vehicles in steep places.
Make sure that you put your handbrake on.
Matt Carden, NBN News.